Memories were cruel. Vlad had spent years burying them, locking away the ghosts that clawed at his ribs. But Lucien Devereaux was ripping them free, piece by piece, with nothing more than a cocky grin and those damn knowing eyes. Lucien was trouble, wild, reckless, the kind of man who could make Vlad forget everything that kept him sharp, kept him ruthless. And right now, that was the last thing he needed. Alessandra Virelli was missing, the queen of malice. Her enemies never died easy. Whoever took her was already living on borrowed time. Yet even as the clock ran down, even as the hunt coiled tight in Vlad's chest, all he could think about was Lucien. A distraction, a mistake, a temptation that tasted like ruin. A ruin that Vlad would run to, even as it shattered him, because some destructions were too beautiful to resist.
Opening. This is an audiobook recording of Under His Gun, M.M. Cop Romance, written by J.K. Jones and narrated by Sasha Vlad and Matthew Shiner. This romance contains mature themes intended for adult audiences. This audiobook is part of The Devil's Own Heartbeat series. It can be listened to as a standalone, but it's best to listen to the series in order. No part of this audiobook may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form without the prior written permission of the author. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. If you'd like to hear more audiobooks, please like and subscribe. Thank you for respecting the hard work of the author, and we hope you enjoy this story.
Chapter 1. Vlad. Lucien Devereaux strolled into the precinct 30 minutes late, drenched in expensive cologne and the kind of confidence that pissed Vlad Mikhailov off on sight. They'd crossed paths before, briefly, forgettably, but the second Lucien stepped into the room, something shifted. Vlad exhaled sharply, glancing at the clock. This was supposed to be quick. One last case before his promotion to lead detective. He had no patience for delays, and even less for distractions. But Lucien, with his rumpled shirt, that lazy smirk, and lips made for sin, he was exactly that. A distraction. That's all it was. Nothing more. At least, that's what Vlad kept telling himself. Natasha, or was it Natalie? Whatever the hell her name was, let out a low whistle as Lucien dropped into a chair. Rough night, Devereaux. Let me guess, out all night, she asked, smirking. There was something about his lecherous grin that irked Vlad. Something like that. Lucien responded, running a hand through his mess of dark hair. Yeah, on his knees. Vlad scoffed inwardly, already bored. This was a waste of time. Anyone who strolled in that late had no business wearing a badge, let alone sitting at this table. This wasn't some routine case. It was an execution. An officer was dead. An entire squad was eviscerated, including his friend. Rick Morton had been Vlad's partner for 3 years before he went off the rails, taking a girl named Jenny hostage at the precinct to pressure his CI into cooperating. It was a reckless move, made even worse by the fact that the CI was the current boyfriend of Domenico Virelli, a slippery snake with pockets so deep and connections so vast that going after him was a fool's errand. And Vlad was nobody's fool. He tossed his dirty blonde hair over his shoulder, surveying the dingy police quarters, if they could even be called that. He'd been in this crap hole for 5 years and had absolutely no intentions of leaving until his promotion was carved in stone. All right, the captain came charging into the room. Vlad leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, barely suppressing a smirk at the sight of Captain Bill Mulroney, huffing and puffing like a winded marathon runner. The man was built like a poorly stacked pile of bricks, and that ridiculous red tie did him no favors. Let's just get started, Bill grumbled, slapping a stack of files onto the desk. The fluorescent lights overhead glared off his shiny bald head. The situation is dire. Alessandra Virelli has gone missing. Vlad's smirk faded. He sat up straighter. Virelli's sister. That was a hell of a development. Missing? He echoed. As in, she took off on her own. Or as in, someone made her disappear. Bill exhaled through his nose, clearly not in the mood for games. Last seen 2 nights ago leaving La Ferro, some high-end club downtown. Her driver never made it back to the Virelli estate. The car was found abandoned in Queens this morning. No signs of a struggle, but no sign of her either. Vlad ran a hand through his hair, already feeling the migraine forming. Dionisio Virelli might have been untouchable, but his little sister, that was a different story. If she was in trouble, every criminal in the city would be looking over their shoulders. Virelli's reaction? Vlad asked, already knowing the answer. Bill scoffed. Like you'd expect. He's tearing through the boroughs, looking for blood. And if we don't get ahead of this, we'll have bodies piling up before sundown. He pointed a thick finger at Vlad. You're taking the lead on this. Find her before he does, or we're looking at a damn war. Vlad's jaw tightened. This wasn't just about a missing girl. It was about keeping the city from turning into a battleground. All right, he muttered, and he had a feeling he wouldn't like where this case would take him. Lucien raised his hand, and Vlad already hated whatever was about to come out of his mouth. His voice was like 1,000 toddlers screeching at once, an abomination of sound that made Vlad's molars ache. Any leads? Lucien asked. One, Bill replied. She was last spotted at an MMA fight just down the block from where Rick. Bill swallowed hard. Where Rick Morton was slaughtered. Well, decimated was more like it. There hadn't been enough left of him to fill a sandwich bag. Anyway, Bill continued, clearing his throat. Since then, nobody's seen her. Not even her cousin, Domenico Virelli. He's put out a hit for anyone who knows anything. Look, we've got 5 branches of the Virelli family gunning for someone's head. But if we pick her up first, we can book her on charges. To say that was a horrible idea was the understatement of the century. The Virellis owned half of New York City. Their reach was longer than a CVS receipt, and they were going to take down Dionisio's little sister, the one branded Capo dei Capi, the Queen of Malice. It was insane, a death wish, and Vlad would take it. I'm on it, Vlad said, rising from his seat. Great, Bill said. Take Lucien with you. He's your new partner. The vein in Vlad's forehead nearly burst. I don't need a new partner. You do if I say you do. Vlad exhaled sharply. Yeah, this was shaping up to be a great day. Vlad turned to look at Lucien, who winked at him. Freaking winked. Vlad wasn't in the mood for homicide today. Right, fine, he muttered through gritted teeth. You guys get settled up, head out to review the CCTV scans, and figure out what else has happened. Bill ordered. We need our people on it as fast as possible. Vlad, I'm giving you full reign over the entire operation. You'll be heading up your own department here, so now's the time to stretch your sea legs. Stretch your sea legs? What was this? A pirate movie. Got it, boss. Vlad nodded, ignoring the ridiculous metaphor. This was it. His moment. The promotion he'd been working toward. And he wasn't about to let Lucien freaking Devereaux be the iceberg that sank his damn ship. So, Lucien grinned, sucking on a red lollipop, swirling it around his mouth in the most obnoxious way possible, making loud slurping noises that could probably be heard from the top of the Empire State Building. Why did God hate him so much? Vlad's eyes narrowed. Can you spit that out? I can't talk to you if your mouth is full. Lucien smirked, his lips glistening red from the candy. Want to replace it with something else? Another reason Vlad hated Satan and all his minions. Lucien was a flirt, and not just any flirt. He flirted with anything that had two legs and a hole. Yes, that imagery was correct. And on top of that, he seemed to have his sights set on Vlad, the big Russian who looked like he could bench press him. There was a familiarity in the way Lucien smirked, like he knew a secret Vlad had forgotten. It tugged at something buried deep, something old and unimportant. A face in a lineup, a name scrawled on a report. Didn't matter. The rookie was a disaster. And if Vlad had crossed paths with him before, it was probably with cuffs involved. Huh. How about my fist? Vlad said, cracking his knuckles. Does that work? Since you like to slurp stuff, how about I break all your teeth so you can eat soup for the rest of your life? Lucien threw his head back and laughed. Slurping. Ha! Can I put you in a glass and slurp you? Okay, first off. Cringe, Vlad said, rubbing his temples. And again, let's focus. We need to review the CCTV footage and move on from there. No can do, sir, Lucien said, shaking his head. Bill doesn't know yet, but it's been wiped. Wiped? How do you know? Because I wiped it. Lucien deadpanned before bursting into a hideous cackle. Ha ha ha. Nah, man. I already spoke to them. That's why I was late. I thought you were late because you couldn't tell time. Vlad shot back. Vlad and Lucien walked into the tech room, the hum of computers filling the air like a living thing, but somehow still dead inside. The smell of stale coffee and metal lingered, blending into something unpleasant. Monitors flashed on every wall, each one flickering fast enough to give you a headache if you stared too long. Sally was standing at the console, looking like she walked straight out of an action movie. Tough, smart, and effortlessly cool. Her jet black hair was cropped short, and a silver nose ring caught the light above her, making it seem like she had just walked out of a rock band backstage. Sally glanced up, her gaze flicking over them quickly before she gave a curt nod. Her fingers moved fast, pressing buttons on the console, like she was already 10 steps ahead of them. "All right, gentlemen," she said, her tone smooth but professional, like she had more important things to do than entertain two guys who didn't know the first thing about technology. "This is all we've got." The grainy footage flickered to life, showing Alessandra heading toward her car outside the club. Lucien leaned against the doorframe, his knee bouncing up and down, tapping his lollipop against his teeth in a way that was way too loud for anyone's liking. Damn, nothing says subtle like rolling up to a kidnapping with a trunk full of AKs. Lucien let out a low whistle. Vlad ignored him, eyes locked on the screen. "Run the plates, Sally. I want an ETA on who owns that car and where it's been." Sally nodded and got to work, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "NYPD databases are running it now. Might take a minute. Whoever owns this isn't a regular Joe. Looks like they've run some interference on the system." Of course they have. Lucien, still bouncing his knee like a live wire, leaned in closer. Could be a ghost plate. If they're pros, they'll be running a fake registration, maybe even swapping tags. I know a guy who can cross-check street cams for us. Off the books. Vlad shot him a look. "And why do you have a guy for that?" "Would you believe me if I said Boy Scout troop leader? Lucien teased. No, Vlad deadpanned. Good call. Before Vlad could snap back, Sally spoke up. Got something. The plates belong to a rental company up in the Bronx. One that doesn't ask too many questions. Car was reported stolen 2 weeks ago, but... She frowned. Last known location before it disappeared off the grid. Just a few blocks from where Rick was killed. Vlad and Lucien exchanged a glance. That's not a coincidence. Vlad muttered. Lucien popped the lollipop out of his mouth with a click. Nope. That's a goddamn breadcrumb trail. Vlad turned back to Sally. I want every camera in a 10-block radius checked. Traffic lights, ATMs, gas stations. If this car so much as sneezed in the wrong direction, I want to know about it. Sally nodded. On it. Lucien stretched, cracking his knuckles. So, boss, what's next? Are we going for a ride? Vlad grabbed his coat. No, we're going hunting. There were certain places in the Bronx that not even the cops would go to. This happened to be one of them. Vlad threw on a long, pitch-black trench coat, his hair falling over his shoulder as he squinted at the rundown building. Lucien was acting twitchy beside him, like a squirrel that just dropped acid. Wonderful. Vlad pulled out his phone, frowning at the messages from his grandma Anya, who kept texting him about the grocery list and the things he needed to pick up. His grandma had raised him after his parents died, and she was all he had. She and his lover he couldn't remember, so he did all the grocery shopping, along with other things. He texted her back, saying he'd pick up the stuff as soon as he was done. He took several steps, not watching where he was going, until he knocked headfirst into Lucien. Vlad reacted, reaching for his gun, only for light laughter to tickle his ear. Hold your horses there, cowboy. Lucien laughed. It's just me. Vlad glared at him, only to realize how close Lucien was, his lips almost brushing his cheek. Lucien had long, girly dark lashes that sickened him, and an ugly pouty mouth too wide for his stupid smug face. Vlad wrenched away and straightened himself. Get out of my face and don't touch me. Lucien gave him a mock salute. Vlad shoved his phone into his pocket, already annoyed to the max, and headed inside the warehouse. He rapped his knuckles twice on the door, and the skinny teenager answered it. Yeah, what do you want? Benny's eyes widened when he saw Vlad's face. Oh crap. Benny moved to slam the door shut, but Vlad wedged his steel toe boots, blocking it. Crap, 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 crap. The teenager took off, but Vlad yanked him back by the collar of his shirt. The teen let out an undignified yelp. Come on, man. I don't think so, Vlad said, grabbing his arm and wrenching it. Tell me what you know. Vlad, come on, I can't. You know how it is. Ow, okay, damn, don't break it. Benny howled. Lucien walked deeper into the warehouse, looking at all the stolen vehicles. Nice. Beats an allowance from mommy and daddy. Screw you, Benny hissed. Look, I don't know anything. You went to high school with Jenny. Jenny Mendez, right? Vlad demanded. Her brother Adriel was beaten up and almost killed by Rico. What can you tell me about that? I don't know nothing. Oh, okay, I'll talk, damn. Talk, Vlad hissed. Look, I know where Adriel is. He's a fighter. He fights at La Gabbia Ferro. Rick was his parole officer. But you know how Rick was. He was itching to clear these streets. He just went about it the wrong way. Vlad twisted his arm harder, and Benny howled. The ink surrounding Benny's forearm caught Vlad's attention. 3 crosses. The one in the middle, the largest. It symbolized the 2 thieves crucified alongside Jesus. Huh. It was a primarily Russian gang tattoo. Vlad wondered why he had it. Whatever. He didn't want some low-life street rat talking about Rick. Rick had been his partner. He knew Rick. After his daughter died, something had broken in the man. He'd moved beyond wanting to clear the streets. He wanted to cleanse them with hellfire. Look, bro, Adriel is now Domenico's boyfriend and his enforcer. That's all I know. Jenny was badly beaten by the cops, so Rick messed up there. And they've decided not to sue, but that doesn't mean they won't get revenge. Benny wheezed out. Vlad already knew that. Tell me something I don't know. Alessandra wanted out. Now we're talking. Go on. After Nico and Don killed Giulio and Marco, she felt unsafe and wanted out. But word on the street is she won't leave unless she gets someone to come with her. Who? Vlad demanded. I don't know, man. Ow, ow, Benny hissed. They call Dioniso the devil, Alessandra the queen of malice, Domenico the father of lies, and Victor the white tiger. They call him the Black Death. The what? Vlad almost keeled over with laughter. These names were so stupid. Black Death. Who the hell came up with this nonsense? Yeah, I know, it's dumb. But that's what they call him. Victor's got a reputation, man. He's lethal, like a snake that bites before you even see it coming. Vlad rolled his eyes, but kept his focus. Right, the Black Death. Real intimidating. He shook his head, trying not to snicker. Now, get to the point. Who's Alessandra is trying to run with? Him, Benny huffed. But he's almost impossible to find. He's like a chameleon, man. Changes his skin every 5 years or so. Look, I don't know anything. I sell stolen cars. Vlad raised an eyebrow. A chameleon? This guy really was the street rat of the week. Who did you sell this car to? Vlad held up a picture of the beige van. Ah. Benny looked down, suddenly finding his shoes extremely interesting. I don't remember. LASS or something. I don't know. Lucien stalked over, narrowing his eyes. Lass! Who the hell is that? I don't know, man. Some Italian guy. How should I know? Benny demanded, his voice climbing in panic. Are you going to let me go? Vlad and Lucien exchanged a look before Vlad gave a resigned sigh. It was a dead end. Fine, you're free to go, he muttered, turning on his heel. Benny quickly scurried off, rubbing his wrist like a beaten dog. Vlad took a deep breath, smoothing out his leather jacket and shaking his head. A nothing burger. Great. He could practically hear the crickets in his brain. Benny shot him a glare. We're done, Vlad said as he walked out the door. Tell your mother I said hello. Screw you, Vlad, Benny hissed. As they got back into the car, Vlad flopped down with a huff, tossing his auburn hair back. Lucien, ever the picture of focus, pulled out a notepad and began doodling. Vlad resisted the urge to roll his eyes, but couldn't help the frown when he saw Lucien writing "Lass" over and over, like a guy who had nothing better to do than to create a crappy crossword puzzle. What are you doing? Vlad asked, trying to suppress his irritation. Lucien bit his tongue, turning the notebook this way and that, as if the laws of physics would suddenly break and offer him a goddamn revelation. Then, with a triumphant clap of his knee, he looked up. I've got it. By George, I've got it. Vlad blinked. Who the hell is George? It's elementary, my dear Watson, Lucien said, adopting a ridiculously bad British accent. Here. He turned the notepad backward, his eyes sparkling with satisfaction. Vlad stared at the notepad, and then, oh hell, there it was. Sal, for Salvatore. Salvatore had made a fatal mistake. He tried to take Nico from Don, intending to make him his personal bodyguard. What he didn't realize was that Don and Nico were more than just allies. They were lovers. The fallout was brutal. The Virelli mansion became a bloodbath, with every last member inside slaughtered, all except Alessandra. And now, the consequences were coming full circle. The Salvatore family wanted revenge. What started as a power move had ignited a full-scale gang war. Vlad was surprised. That made sense. Vlad went to get something out of the glove compartment, just as Lucien leaned over, closer than he needed to. The air between them thickened, charged with something electric. Vlad froze, his fingers still gripping the handle. Lucien's breath ghosted over his cheek, warm and teasing, sending a shiver down his spine. His pulse kicked up, pounding against his ribs. Lucien didn't move away. If anything, he tilted his head, lips hovering dangerously close, so close that Vlad could feel the whisper of them against his own. His grip on the glove compartment tightened. Should he pull back? Should he close the distance? Lucien's lashes flickered, his gaze heavy-lidded, dark, waiting. And then, beep, beep. A car horn blared behind them. Vlad jerked back so fast his head hit the headrest. Lucien swore under his breath, sitting up with a scowl. Another honk. Vlad twisted around, scowling at the impatient driver behind them. Lucien let out a slow breath, lips quirking into something unreadable. Guess that was our cue. Vlad swallowed hard, gripping the steering wheel like it could steady the rush of heat still buzzing in his veins. Yeah, he muttered. Guess so. But the way Lucien looked at him, like this wasn't over, made it impossible to focus on anything else. So, what's my reward? Vlad swallowed again, harder this time, his throat clicking. Damn. His eyes flicked down to Lucien's lips, red and so damn inviting. A knee to the gut, he grumbled. Sounds kinky. I like my man hands-on. He plucked at the lapels of Vlad's leather jacket, his fingers teasing the fabric. Something about the rookie felt off. The way he moved, the way he tilted his head when he listened like he already knew the answers. Vlad had seen that before. Somewhere. Maybe in a case file. Maybe in a holding cell. His gut twisted, but he pushed the thought aside. He'd arrested too many lowlifes to keep track. Touch me again and I'll break your wrist. Lucien laughed, a dark, low sound that sent a shiver down Vlad's spine. He didn't move back, and it was messing with Vlad's head. How'd you figure it out so fast anyway? Lucien leaned in closer, his lips brushing against Vlad's ear with every word. Maybe I'm just that good. You should try me out sometime, so you'll see how good I can be. I'd rather stick my junk in a bear trap, he muttered, starting the car with a grunt. The drive back to the precinct was silent, except for the purr of the engine, but Vlad couldn't shake the feeling that something about Lucien didn't sit right. Still, for now, he let it slide, barely. Vlad trudged up the familiar stone steps, plastic grocery bags cutting into his fingers. The greenish-gray house loomed ahead, its porch sagging under the weight of time. The old Madonna statue stood solemn, watching over the creaking wooden chairs where Grandma Anya had spent too many afternoons. His stomach turned. Something was wrong. Then he saw them. Police swarming the front yard, yellow tape stretched tight like a wound. Vlad, goddammit, Vlad! Bill's voice barely registered, before Vlad shoved past him, his heart slamming against his ribs. Officers shouted, but he didn't hear them. His boots skidded on the porch, nearly sending him sprawling as he ripped the door open. The house smelled of iron. Vlad ran, his breath coming in short, jagged gasps. His combat boots slipped on the old rug, but he caught himself, rounding the corner. And then he saw her. Grandma Anya lay crumpled in a pool of red, her vacant eyes staring at something far beyond him. A broken sound wrenched from his throat, raw and jagged. And then, movement. Vlad's gaze snapped up. Lucien was already there, slouched on the couch, one arm resting lazily over the back. His head tilted, his mouth curved in something like a smirk. Blood oozed from a gash above his brow, slick and wet against his skin. He lifted his gaze to Vlad, eyes dark and knowing. "Damn," Lucien murmured. "You're late." Chapter 2. Vlad. The first rule of homicide in New York: never trust anyone. The second: especially not the man standing over your grandmother's body. Vlad's world shrank to the blood-stained floor, to the hollow stare of the only woman who had ever loved him. Then to Lucien, calm and bleeding, watching him like he already knew how this would end. Bill gripped Vlad's bicep, talking a mile a minute, but the words blurred into static. His brain was too busy trying to make sense of the impossible. He had dropped Lucien off at the precinct after that heated argument. The one that ended with Vlad's leather pants growing too damn tight, with the ghost of Lucien's lips against his ear. Then he went grocery shopping, picked up the things his grandmother had texted him about just hours ago, and headed here, like he always did, down the familiar dirt streets where shadows stretched long and houses caved in on themselves. So how the hell did Lucien beat him here? It was a goddamn scientific miracle. Rage rippled through Vlad, but Bill's grip was an iron clamp, holding him in place. Lucien offered him a small bitter smile, a withering olive branch. Vlad wanted to smash his face in, but he needed facts. He needed answers. What happened? His voice came out hoarse. "A break-in," Bill muttered. "I'm sorry, man. Lucien was the only cop in the area who could get here fast enough." Which was a damn lie. Vlad had just dropped Lucien off at the precinct, almost an hour ago. For this to be even remotely plausible, Lucien would have had to leave the station immediately and drive straight here. That meant Bill wasn't treating them as partners. He was treating Lucien as a suspect. Christ. Vlad ran a shaking hand through his dirty blonde hair and sank onto the couch. Rick Morton had been a dirty cop. Everyone knew that. The truth had come out after Jenny Mendez was brutalized by the NYPD for information, while her brother was forced to infiltrate Domenico's empire under duress. Vlad had nothing to do with any of that, but since he had worked with Rick, Bill wasn't sure if he could trust him either. Lucien pressed an ice pack to his busted head, the wound already swelling into a nasty knot. Vlad felt smug about that. "My condolences, man," Lucien said. Vlad's teeth clenched. "Details." "Right." Bill crouched in front of him, rubbing a hand over his stubble jaw. "Burglar broke in, used a blunt crowbar, cracked her over the head. She was dead before she even hit the ground." His voice was all business, but there was a tightness to it, a weight that sat between every word. Nothing was stolen. Vlad stared at the floor, the blood already drying to a dark, ugly stain. Nothing stolen, just violence for the sake of it. That didn't sit right. Lucien got the call while he was in the area. He came in through the back and engaged the suspect. There was a struggle. That's how he got the knot on his head. Perp fled out the back. Bill continued. Vlad's gaze snapped to Lucien. Calm. Controlled. Not a damn speck of dust on his pristine dress shirt, aside from the blood seeping from his temple, like he'd barely fought at all. Without a word, Vlad pushed past them and headed for the back door. Sure enough, the muddy ground bore the evidence. Deep footprints leading away from the house, a few places where the suspect had slipped, and then a disturbance at the wooden fence. They'd climbed it, fled into the night. Vlad reached for the shattered golden handle of the back door. The metal was still slightly warm from the heat of the day, but the break was fresh. His thumb ran over the splintered wood. His grandmother had refused to let him fix this door. Said the creak was useful. Let her know when someone was coming. She would have heard the intruder. She would have had time to react. When did Lucien get the call? Vlad asked. Bill stepped up behind him. 7:15. 7:15. Vlad's fingers twitched against the handle. That meant in less than 20 minutes, his grandmother was dead. But for the timeline to make sense, Lucien would have had to be practically outside the house already. Too fast. Vlad exhaled slowly. His pulse pounded in his ears. Something was off. But he didn't say it out loud. Not yet. Vlad came back into the room. The EMS was treating Lucien's wound while he spoke quietly to one of the officers on duty. Natalie. Vlad wasn't sure what her name was. The place was a mess. There was no way he'd be staying here tonight. Why don't I take you to a hotel, huh? You can get some sleep and take your bereavement. No bereavement. I'm fine, Vlad uttered, his voice like steel. We were investigating the Virelli case, and we just got our first lead. Bill perked up. Okay, we can discuss it later. At least get some sleep. Lucien can take you to a hotel. Vlad's mouth thinned. Lucien had a knot on his head the size of a grapefruit, and they wanted him to drive Vlad to a hotel. Bill was clearly out of his mind if he thought that was happening. But when Vlad stared him down, Bill didn't flinch. His message was clear. He didn't trust Vlad. His association with Rick and the Virelli case was too close to home. Hell, for all Vlad knew, Bill thought he staged this whole thing. Vlad turned back to Lucien. He saw his eyes and mouth smile, but something was clutched in his fist. Vlad saw the glint of metal in Lucien's fist, and his vision went red. Before he could think, he was striding across the room. Lucien barely had time to react before Vlad grabbed his wrist and twisted hard. Lucien let out a sharp howl, his body jerking forward as the object in his grasp tumbled to the floor with a soft clink. A locket. His grandma's locket. Everything else in the room, the officers, the EMS, Bill's sharp intake of breath, blurred into static. The small golden pendant gleamed up at him from the blood-stained floor, its delicate chain tangled, the tiny hinge slightly ajar. What the hell? Lucien snarled, wrenching his arm back. But Vlad wasn't listening. His mind raced. Lucien had this. Why? How? That locket never left his grandma's neck. She never took it off, not in all the years Vlad had known her. And now, somehow, Lucien had it clenched in his fist, like some dirty keepsake he had no business touching. Where the hell did you get that? Vlad snarled. Lucien's expression flickered, just for a second. Then he scoffed, rolling his sore wrist. Christ, Vlad, I found it on the floor when I got here. Bull! Vlad snapped. Bill stepped between them, hands raised. Hey, enough. Not here. Vlad barely heard him. His pulse roared in his ears, because there was one simple fact that wouldn't leave his head, no matter how much he wanted to deny it. If Lucien really found that locket on the floor, that meant someone had ripped it from his grandma's neck before she died. And Vlad wasn't sure if that made Lucien look more innocent or 10 times more guilty. However, a piece of paper slipped out of the locket and everyone froze. Vlad's breath caught in his throat. The words stared back at him, stark against the crumpled paper in his grandmother's unmistakable handwriting. Capo dei capi, the boss of bosses, the highest rank in the Mafia. The only person who had that title was Alessandra Virelli, and she has gone missing. His fingers tightened around the locket, the edges biting into his palm. His grandmother, sweet, stubborn Anya, had no business knowing those words, let alone writing them down and hiding them away. His pulse thundered in his ears as he turned to Lucien, who was shaking out his wrist, glaring but saying nothing. That damn smirk played on his lips, the one that always made Vlad want to break his jaw or kiss him senseless. Bill stepped closer. "What the hell is that?" Vlad didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was moving too fast, piecing together fragments of a puzzle he didn't even know existed. His grandmother was murdered, nothing stolen. Lucien had been here first, and now this. That locket had never left his grandmother's neck, not in all the years Vlad had known her, and yet she had the words scrawled inside of it. Capo dei capi. Vlad clenched his jaw and looked at Lucien, eyes cold. "Where did you get this?" "It was in her hand when I found her." Lies. His grandma had been lying in a pool of her own blood, her hands limp at her sides. If she had been clutching anything, the paramedics would have found it first. "You're lying." Lucien didn't blink. "Then prove it." Vlad's grip on the locket tightened. Lucien was caught standing over her body, and now he had just been caught, holding onto something that should have gone straight into evidence. "All right, knock it off," Bill said, getting in between us. "We'll submit the locket for evidence. Now, Lucien and Vlad, head to the nearest hotel. I can have a car drop you there and pick you up tomorrow morning." Vlad didn't say a word, his gaze fixed on Lucien, who returned the stare with a look of his own. Vlad looked out the window, his mind still buzzing with questions. He wanted answers, wanted to feel his fists connect with something, but instead, he sat there, simmering in the quiet. Lucien didn't break the silence either, his face unreadable. The atmosphere felt like an old violin string, pulled too tight, vibrating invisibly between them as the car swallowed the road in smooth, measured gulps. Once inside the hotel room, Vlad dropped his duffel bag onto the floor and went straight to the shower, needing the sting of hot water against his skin to wash away the exhaustion and frustration. He braced his hands against the tile, letting the water beat against his shoulders. Alone. He was so damn alone in this world. The rush of burning in his eyes started, and he quickly turned off the water, trying to push back the grief that threatened to overtake him. Now wasn't the time to mourn. There was too much left to do. Vlad stepped out of the shower, water dripping from his chest, his dirty blonde auburn hair slicked back. He reached for the towel, wrapping it around his waist. He stood in front of the mirror for a moment, staring at the man who had become a shell of himself over the years. His body was covered in scars, a story of violence, pain, and survival. When he stepped out of the bathroom, still dripping wet, he could feel Lucien's eyes on him. The bed creaked as Vlad sat, feeling the dip behind him. Vlad put his elbows on his knees, sighing, and he almost flinched when he felt warm lips press against his spine. Vlad froze, his body rigid. The touch was soft, lingering, sending a jolt through him. "What are you doing?" Lucien's lips traced the scars on Vlad's back, each press sending a shiver down his spine. Vlad stayed still, every muscle tense. His breath caught in his throat. His mind screamed to pull away, but his body betrayed him. "Stop it." Lucien didn't pull away. He stayed close, his lips brushing against Vlad's skin. Vlad's heart pounded, his chest tight. Lucien was closer now, lips dragging across the muscle in his upper shoulder, dipping into his collarbone like he was licking the sweat off his skin. Vlad sucked in a harsh breath when his lips found that scar, the one on his neck, jagged and uneven, a patchwork of raised pink skin. It curled like a withered petal, twisted and gnarled as if someone had tried to carve a flower into flesh, but left it mangled and unfinished. "Get off me," Vlad whispered, his nostrils flaring, but still Lucien didn't move. He grew bolder, and it made Vlad's head swim. Something about the kiss felt familiar, and Vlad tried reaching for it. The memory of another set of lips on him, of a man with a blurred face and a wicked grin. Lucien kissed it like he knew exactly how it happened, like he wanted to scorch the memory from Vlad's skin, to chase away the ghosts that still lingered there. The touch sent a shockwave through Vlad, white-hot and blinding, knocking the breath from his lungs until all he saw were stars. He should shove Lucien away. What the hell were they doing anyway? But he couldn't. His body seized, his pleasure cresting, and then, "Moja zvezda," Lucien whispered. "Luca." Vlad's breath shuddered out of him. No, Luca was dead. Vlad spun, his hand coming around Lucien's throat mercilessly, and he slammed him into the bed. Lucien gasped, choking, clawing at Vlad's hand before he relaxed, stilling completely. "How the hell do you know that name?" Vlad snarled. Lucien's smile grew, but he couldn't speak. The hand around his throat was too tight. Vlad loosened it fractionally, watching the flush rise in Lucien's cheeks. Vlad was straddling him now and very much aware of how the towel was beginning to unravel. Lucien's tongue darted out to wet his lips, his eyes turning hooded. "I know a lot of things." He wheezed. "I know your real name isn't Vlad, and I know your grandma wasn't as simple as she seemed." "How the hell did you get that locket?" Vlad snarled. "She gave it to me." The lies curdled in Vlad's stomach, thick and rancid. "You don't know her. How could she—" "I know her, the same way I know you," Lucien uttered. "But you aren't ready to know how yet." Lucien's hands were inching up, then they were on Vlad's thighs. Vlad's heart beat like a trapped hummingbird. He couldn't think. He couldn't speak. He had to get the upper hand. Slowly, he released Lucien, his large hand moving from his thick throat to brush his thumb across Lucien's lower lip. His trim beard framed his face, but the hair was so dark and his skin so pale, it made his lips look plumper. "You saved my life once," Lucien whispered. "You don't remember. Heroes never do. But you did. I'm indebted to you." Vlad didn't want to have anything to do with Lucien. In prison, Lucien would have been a favorite. His dark lashes fanned over his cheeks, his eyes too wide, too pretty. Vlad thumbed his bottom lip, and Lucien's mouth enclosed around it, making his breath hitch. This man looked so damn familiar. But whenever Vlad reached for the image, it dissipated like smoke. "Use me, Vlad. Use me until I choke. I want you to—" Christ. Vlad was too pent up, wound like a coil. Lucien was here begging for it, and Vlad didn't trust him, but that didn't mean he didn't want him. "Fine," Vlad snarled. "Choke." Lucien's eyes gleamed as he reached up and tore off the towel, reaching up to grab Vlad, but he got there first, his hand clamping down on Lucien's wrist, hard. "Do you know what the burglar was after?" Vlad asked, although he already knew the answer. Annoyance flashed in Lucien's eyes and he let go, falling back onto the bed. "Yes, and it wasn't your grandma. Did Rick ever give you any files about the island in the Philippines? The one rumored to be where they raised Nico?" Nico was Don's partner, the Filipino boy he had forged into a killing machine. Rumors swirled that Don had unleashed Nico to massacre half the Virelli family, leaving Alessandra as the sole survivor. The thought alone made Vlad's stomach knot with unease. All of Rick's files had gone to Vlad. "You think that's what they're after?" "Yes, I think that's where the key to where Alessandra was taken lies," Lucien said. Vlad sat back on his haunches, not caring that the towel was dangling off his hips and his junk was in Lucien's face. He thought back to what Lucien said about the burglar, how he'd tried to kill his grandma and then Lucien, yet nothing was stolen. That meant the intruder hadn't found what he was looking for. The case files had been declassified, but with Alessandra missing, her enemies would be desperate for any lead on Don and Nico. And this was the place to find it. "Were you knocked out?" Vlad asked. I think so. I lost consciousness for sure." "Then how do you know you saw him run out the back door?" Vlad asked. "I saw him. He rounded the corner to the kitchen, and there is the back door," Lucien replied, but he sounded unsure of himself. Vlad regarded him. Lucien wasn't wrong, but he wasn't right either. Yes, the back door was there, but if I were a skilled burglar and knew the police would be on me, I wouldn't risk spending that time jumping through fences and gardens on the off chance that I'd run into a feral dog or get caught by the street's CCTV. If I were smart, I wouldn't go through the backyard. I'd wait in the basement. Vlad was on his feet in seconds, tearing off the towel and stabbing his legs through a pair of blue jeans. He grabbed a shirt and threw on his combat boots. "What are you doing? What's happening?" Lucien asked. "The backyard was there, but so is the basement," Vlad snarled. So, Vlad said, putting on his badge. "If the burglar was looking for information regarding the case, he wouldn't just flee out the backyard." Lucien's eyes widened. "You think the suspect is still in the house?" "Worse. Vlad knows he never left." Chapter 3. Vlad. One golden necklace was all it took to shatter everything Vlad thought he knew about Lucien Devereaux. Now, as they sped through the dark streets back to his grandmother's house, Vlad's grip tightened on the wheel. Lucien beside him was just as quiet, but Vlad could feel his gaze, sharp and knowing. The locket had been the first crack. The man in the basement would tell the rest of the story. They drove back to the house in tense silence. The police were still on the scene when they arrived. Vlad and Lucien flashed their badges, pushing past the officers at the perimeter. Inside, the girl from before, Natalie or Natasha, gave them a confused glance as they moved with purpose. Vlad ignored her, drawing his weapon. "Cover me," he snarled, keeping close to the wall. "Clear the area with as little noise as possible." She gave a curt nod, gripping her firearm. The officers inside caught on quickly, moving into position. Vlad tested the basement door. It creaked. He met Lucien's gaze and nodded before aiming his gun down the dark stairwell. Shadows flickered along the walls, shifting unnaturally. Then something moved. A figure darted out from the darkness. Lucien fired first, the shot cracking through the silence. The bullet hit the intruder in the thigh. A sharp, agonized howl tore through the air. It should have been enough to take him down, but Lucien wasn't finished yet. The man's shot went wide, panic in his eyes. Lucien didn't hesitate. He aimed for the center, steadying his breath, and squeezed the trigger. The deafening crack of the gun was followed by the sickening thud of impact. The man dropped like a sack of bricks, his chest erupting in a burst of blood. Vlad rushed forward, yanking off the ski mask, and his heart stopped. Benny. Vlad's heart kick-started again, slamming against his ribs as he stared down at the man choking on his own blood. His mind rebelled against what he was seeing. Benny. Oh crap, Lucien muttered, lowering his gun. Benny's lips parted, a wet gurgle escaping. His eyes flickered, glassy with pain, but there was something else there. Something desperate. Vlad grabbed his shirt, hauling him up. "Who sent you?" he barked. "What the hell are you doing here?" Benny coughed, blood bubbling at the corner of his mouth. His fingers twitched like he wanted to reach for Vlad, but he was too weak. Then he rasped out a name, and everything changed. Bratva. Vlad's entire body turned to iron. He stared down at the dying boy, his stomach churning. Was that who took Alessandra, Natasha, or Natalie, whatever the hell her name was, stepped forward, checking Benny's pulse. "Damn it!" she hissed. She shot Vlad a dirty look before calling for the EMS to come down. Lucien and Vlad stepped back, giving them room. When they finally got Benny's body in a bag and carried him upstairs, the two followed. They shared a look, and Vlad knew Lucien had heard the word too. Damn it. They were so screwed. Vlad stepped outside, hands on his hips, taking a deep breath of the crisp night air. Everything hurts. His eyes stung. Things he no longer wanted to think about clawed at the edges of his mind. People long since dead, now rising like bloated corpses from the river. The back door opened and closed. A lighter clicked. Vlad turned to see Lucien smoking, the smoke curling around his face, making him look sharper, more carved from shadow. Not even the knot between his brows could mar that face. Lucien held out his fist. Vlad opened his palm. The necklace dropped into it, its weight heavier than it should have been. "Let's get to work." Lucien jerked his head back toward the house, and Vlad realized he meant the files in his grandma's room. His throat constricted, but he followed anyway. They climbed the stairs, Vlad's combat boots stomping on the old wooden floors. He ignored the twist in his gut at the sight of his grandma's open door and headed straight to his room, kicking over a few beer cans, an empty pizza box forgotten on the dresser, and a mile-high pile of dirty laundry. "Cozy," Lucien muttered, his nose wrinkling in disgust. "I wasn't expecting company. Least of all him, a guy Vlad had only known in passing until he came to his partner less than 24 hours ago." Vlad dug into his closet, pulling out the boxes of declassified files Bill had given him once the case against Domenico Virelli had been closed. Kicking the dirty clothes under the bed, he pushed off the old covers and gestured for Lucien to sit down. "Let's go to work." The more they read, the sicker Vlad felt. A kid, Nico, product number 00001. The first child was taken by Dr. Priya, pumped full of enhancers. Zolotrin X, Myostim 9, Neurophase Beta. Drugs designed to sharpen reflexes, build unnatural muscle mass, and suppress emotional response. Hormones to mold him into the perfect soldier. He wasn't born. He was made. forged in a lab by Dionisio. Then, it sharpened into a blade meant for bloodshed. Salvatore. Sofia Salvatore. Giovanni Morello. Half a dozen others, including Don's father, his brother. All murdered by the same boy Don later took into his bed. Vlad's stomach twisted up into a brutal knot. That bastard didn't just build a weapon. He built a siren. "Look at this," Lucien said, stepping closer. Vlad must have been sleep-deprived, because the smell of Lucien's musk hit him like a brick to the face. Tantalizing, heady, and entirely too intoxicating. He felt like he could punch through cement just by standing this close. Recognition prickled at the back of his mind. A voice, a glimpse of something half-formed. Lucien, laughing. But not here, not now. It didn't fit. Vlad shook it off. His brain was playing tricks on him. He'd seen too many criminals, locked up too many men who thought they were untouchable. The rookie was just another screw-up. "The facility is still operational," Lucien muttered, passing him another file. "And they're making more soldiers." "What?" Vlad snatched the papers. Impossible. But there it was, in black and white. It wouldn't end with Nico. Don had plans, blueprints, supply orders, names of potential recruits. "Who's running it?" Vlad asked, voice tight. "No idea." Lucien sighed, rolling his neck. "But this could be bad." "I'm going to the bathroom." "Sure," Vlad muttered. Lucien peeled off his jacket as he walked out, revealing a tight black t-shirt that clung to every inch of muscle. Broad shoulders, arms like two slabs of prime-cut steak, back tapering down to a criminally narrow waist. Yup, definitely sleep-deprived. He had to be hallucinating about how attractive Lucien was. 10 minutes later, Lucien came back with 2 cups of coffee. Vlad hummed in appreciation when he saw it was black. "How'd you know my coffee order?" Lucien didn't even blink. "Because I've been stalking you." "Seriously?" Vlad snorted. "You're Russian. I just assumed you'd take it with vodka." Lucien took a slow sip. "You think you can judge me on coffee? I don't remember you even being able to make a decent cup." Lucien's grin widened. "Just because I didn't burn the first pot doesn't mean I'm not a pro." "A pro? Please. You're more of a disaster than a barista." Lucien chuckled. "Keep talking, Vlad. I like the view." Vlad felt a heat rise in his chest when Lucien's mocha eyes landed on him. He quickly looked away, focusing on the stack of papers in front of him. His heartbeat quickened, but he couldn't quite figure out why. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the dusty curtains, turning the room gold. Lucien didn't say anything, but the quiet was almost louder than his voice. "Crap," Lucien muttered, drawing Vlad's attention. "Look at this." He thrust the file at Vlad, who took it with a frown. "Enzo," Lucien continued. An old uncle apparently had no idea Giulio and Marco had been killed. He skimmed the file, his finger trailing down the page. "This guy's rap sheet is bigger than the Holy Book." He shook his head. Turns out he was the first Capo dei Capi, but Don overlooked him and picked Alessandra. Vlad's stomach churned as he absorbed the information. Lucien paused, his gaze shifting. "But there's more." Vlad raised an eyebrow. Lucien set down the file and met his gaze. Alessandra's been playing both sides. Her disappearance wasn't just about her. "What are you talking about?" Vlad demanded. "I think Don had something to do with it. Think about it. He killed his entire family. Everyone except her. Why would he keep her alive? No, her disappearance was planned, and it has something to do with everything happening here, Lucien said. Vlad's heart dropped. This was all so much worse than he could have imagined. To think his grandmother had gotten wrapped up into all of this made him sick. He was the one investigating Alessandra's disappearance. He was the one who spoke to Benny that same day. It was possible Benny already knew where he lived and was just waiting for the right time to strike. But even that didn't make much sense. There was no motive to go after his grandmother. Like, what? Vlad couldn't help but ask, his voice thick with disbelief. Lucien regarded him for a long moment. Who was your grandmother? Vlad froze, the question striking him like a physical blow. His heart pounded as his thoughts scrambled. He snapped the file shut, tossing the rest of the papers off the bed with a curse. He was running on fumes, dead tired, but his mind was too wired to sleep. He stripped off his shoes and collapsed back onto the bed, hands behind his head, eyes closed, trying to block out everything. The bed dipped beside him, and the familiar weight of Lucien's body settled in next to him. Before Vlad could react, a warm arm slipped around his waist, pulling him closer. Lucien's head rested on his chest, the movement too natural, too intimate. "What the hell are you doing?" Vlad barked, his voice sharp, but he didn't open his eyes. His body was tense, ready to shove Lucien off, but he couldn't move. "I can't sleep without a pillow," Lucien murmured, his voice low and smooth. "Will you be mine?" Vlad's patience snapped. "Keep talking, and I'll dump you onto the floor." "Ha ha ha. You don't remember me. Not even a little." Lucien chuckled, his warm breath against Vlad's skin, sending an unexpected shiver through him. Vlad's pulse spiked. His body froze, his mind trying to shut out the memory. Lucien's lips brushed against his ear, sending a jolt of heat straight to his core. The tension in his body was electric. His eyes fluttered open, just enough to meet the gaze of Lucien's liquid chestnut eyes, framed by thick, dark lashes. It was too much, dangerous, intoxicating. "Get off me," Vlad whispered, his voice raw and barely controlled. His chest felt tight, his heart pounding in his ears. This was a bad idea. Lucien was a distraction, nothing more. "How long has it been since someone touched you? How long has it been, Vlad? Since someone tasted you?" Lucien's hand slid over his stomach, fingers brushing lightly across his abs before dipping lower. Vlad's breath hitched, and he grabbed Lucien's wrist, squeezing just hard enough to send a warning. They were both breathing heavily now, close enough that Vlad could feel Lucien's pulse against his skin, their proximity threatening to overwhelm him. It was a distraction. That's all it was. But then, Vlad noticed something. A piece of paper sticking out of the back pocket of Lucien's jeans. His eyes narrowed. In one swift motion, he reached behind, snatching the paper before Lucien could react. Lucien's hand shot out, trying to grab it, but Vlad held it high, out of reach. Lucien huffed in frustration, but Vlad didn't care. It was part of a case file, which meant that Lucien had tried to take it, while distracting Vlad with something else, slipping it into his pocket, hoping Vlad wouldn't notice. He scanned the paper, his eyes narrowing with every word he read. Benny, real name, Benjamin Cortello, part of the Cortello family. Vlad's voice was cold now. He barely recognized Benny's name, but the file hit him like a punch to the gut. He was dealing with the Bratva, stolen cars, turf wars, and he was 18 when he died. His fingers traced the lines of the paper, and it all clicked into place. They already had a file on Benny. Why the hell was there a separate, declassified file on him, one marked with Rick's name? It was obvious Lucien was trying to hide it. The question was, why? Vlad kept reading. Then, at the bottom of the page, he saw it. The final revelation. A name, and beneath it, a phrase that made his stomach drop. Benny was more than a victim. He was a pawn in a much larger game. Vlad walked to the harsh morning light slicing through the blinds. He blinked, gritty eyes, mind still clouded. Lucien was beside him, dead to the world, looking peaceful. It must be nice. Vlad stared at the ceiling, wishing for some miracle that this was all a nightmare. But no, his grandmother was gone, the house was empty, and nothing made sense anymore. His stomach growled, but the thought of food felt hollow. Maybe blini or kasha could offer some comfort, but nothing would bring her back. Lucien shifted next to him, and Vlad's jaw tightened. Vlad imagined him blinking awake, his eyes like liquid murky pools. It was all in the eyes. Something in them made Vlad's stomach twist. A flicker of recognition, a shadow of a past he didn't have the patience to untangle. He'd arrested 100 men with that same look. Arrogance, defiance, something broken underneath. It didn't matter. Lucien was just another name to forget. Bastard. He had to move. Revenge was all that mattered now. It was a few moments before he heard footsteps downstairs. Vlad! Lucien! Bill's voice cut through his exhaustion. Vlad groaned, rolling out of bed and feeling the ache of his muscles as he stood. He caught a glimpse of Lucien stirring beside him, his eyes slowly cracking open. Get downstairs. Now! Bill barked from below, and Vlad's stomach tightened. Yeah, we're coming, Vlad muttered, dragging a hand through his hair as he threw on his shirt and headed downstairs. Lucien followed behind, his usual confident stride, tempered by the grogginess of sleep. Bill stood at the bottom of the stairs, arms crossed. Still here? He shook his head, the bags under his eyes practically swallowing his face. Unbelievable. You two are a freaking disaster. I've got 2 dead bodies and no answers. Vlad didn't flinch, though the words stung. He was supposed to be taking lead on this. Instead, he was letting his emotions get the best of him. Lucien, however, remained unfazed, leaning against the doorframe like nothing was wrong. Nothing to say, huh? You come in here, guns blazing, no backup, no brains, and you get our key witness and suspect killed. Do you have any idea what you've done? You've turned this whole operation into a freaking mess. I've got a mountain of paperwork now, thanks to you two. He shot a venomous glance at Vlad. You couldn't just stay at the hotel like I told you. No, you had to play cowboy and screw everything up. Wow, Bill. You really do know how to make a guy feel like a real winner. Lucien snorted. I guess we should have waited for you to show up with a marching band and confetti. Maybe that would have kept Benny alive. Bill's nostrils flared. You think this is a joke? He growled. This isn't some goddamn circus. People are dead, and it's on your heads. Hey, if you want us to feel bad about it, you're doing a hell of a job, he replied. Vlad resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Lucien had a way of getting under his skin that only seemed to make everything worse. He had a headache that wouldn't quit. But right now, there are bigger things to deal with. Actually, that reminds me. Vlad set the papers from last night on the table. The edges crumpled from being tossed around. Benny wasn't just some random kid. He was dealing with the Bratva. And he was tied to this whole mess. He wasn't the one pulling the strings. And now, I think he was set up. Bill's eyes darkened, studying him carefully. And you didn't think to fill me in sooner? No, because Lucien was trying to hide it, and Vlad hadn't found out why yet. We were busy, Bill. There wasn't time. Bill sighed heavily, rubbing his forehead. I've been running myself ragged on this. I barely slept. Vlad opened his mouth to respond, but Bill held up a hand, cutting him off. Benny couldn't have been the murderer. Bill's words hung in the air like a bombshell. Vlad's mind stuttered, shock jolting through him. What? He could barely get the word out. How come? Because there was no murder weapon at the scene. The room fell into silence. Everyone's eyes shot toward Lucien, and for a moment it felt like the whole room held its breath. Lucien looked back at them innocently enough, his expression unreadable, but it didn't sit right. No murder weapon. That was impossible. Vlad's gut clenched, and a wave of suspicion crashed over him. Then why the hell was Benny hiding in the basement? He demanded. Bill stepped forward. Let's not jump to conclusions. His hand landed on Vlad's bicep. A warning. Benny wouldn't have had time to hide the weapon if he had it. But what about the motive? Vlad hissed, his anger flaring up. It didn't make sense. Benny wasn't some mindless killer. Why would he hide in the basement unless... The truth slapped him like a physical blow. Vlad's mind reeled, the pieces clicking into place. They shot at Benny first, and he shot back. Why not just shoot his grandmother if he already had a gun? Why waste time attacking her if he wanted her dead? Unless... Benny wasn't the murderer. He had been set up. Benny had been in the basement because he was hiding from the real murderer. But by whom? He couldn't ignore the growing realization that the real murderer might be standing right in front of him. Lucien. Lucien didn't flinch, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Vlad knew what he had to do. His rage burned bright, blinding and furious, but he had to be sure. The last thing he needed was to make a mistake. Was it you? Vlad spat. Was what me? You think I'd kill your grandma, hide the murder weapon, remain at the scene, and then what? Kill the only witness? Yes, Vlad wanted to hiss, but even he knew Lucien wasn't that stupid. So now they had one dead body, one dead suspect, and one active murderer. Great. And it wasn't even Friday yet. If not you, then who else? Lucien shot him a dirty look. I arrived when... Whatever. Vlad spat. All you've done is talk and nothing to prove your innocence. If you didn't hide the murder weapon, then who did? Why don't you be useful for once, instead of running your big fat mouth? Screw you. Guys? Natasha or Natalie's voice cut through. Guys, there is no murder weapon. What the hell are you talking about? Vlad snapped his head around, his glare sharp enough to cut steel. We got the autopsy back from the coroner. We initially thought it was a blunt object. Natasha swallowed, her face pale. There isn't a murder weapon because her skull was smashed against the counter. Chapter 4. Vlad. There was a moment, a breath between gunfire, a heartbeat stretched too thin, where Vlad thought he could cut and run. Then the bullet hit. It always hits. Vlad threw his hands into the air and stomped out of the house, already over it. The crisp air burned in his lungs as he tipped his head back, staring at the sky. Heavy clouds prowled overhead, shifting like restless beasts, their gray bellies swollen with unspoken threats. The stinging pain behind his eyes came back in full force, along with the aching frustration that filled his lungs. When does it end? He was exhausted and hungry, and he wanted to kill something with how slow they were moving to resolve the case and find the witch Alessandra, who they had no leads for, by the way. Here, Lucien said behind him, giving him a protein bar. We'll find the killer, don't worry. His hand squeezed Vlad's shoulder, and he hated how his body almost melted into it. I told you not to touch me, Vlad muttered. Lucien snorted, but didn't remove his hand. Why wouldn't I? You tell me no, but your body tells me yes. That sounds like something Jeffrey Dahmer would say, Vlad snarled, jerking away from him. I won't take offense to that because clearly you're hungry, Lucien said. Come on, let's get some breakfast. I know a place. Vlad knew it would probably be a dump, but once again he found himself being led by Lucien's careful touch as he steered him toward his car. The drive was short, and Vlad slumped in the passenger seat, arms crossed, scowling out the window as if that would stop his body from reacting to Lucien's presence. It never worked. When they pulled up, the place was exactly what Vlad expected. A rundown diner with a flickering neon open sign. The kind of joint where the coffee was either strong enough to burn a hole through your gut, or so weak it barely deserved the name. The inside smelled like bacon grease and old vomit, but at least it was warm. Lucien, looking infuriatingly smug, slid into a booth with all the ease of a man who knew exactly how good he looked, even with his rumpled shirt and the faintest hint of stubble shadowing his jaw. Under the fluorescent lights, his brown eyes gleamed, deep and rich, burnt hazel, like whiskey caught in sunlight. Vlad hated how stupidly attractive he was, or more accurately, he hated how his body refused to ignore it. It was getting ridiculous at this point. Maybe if he stuffed himself with enough greasy food to put himself into a food coma, his brain would finally shut up. A waitress sauntered over, popping her gum as she held a notepad in one hand. What can I get you boys? Everything, Vlad muttered, snatching up a menu and pretending he wasn't fighting a losing battle against his own hormones. Lucien snorted a laugh at the waitress's shocked expression. Ha ha ha, he's joking. Just 2 breakfast specials and coffee. One black and another with as much sugar and cream as you can. Thanks. He handed the menu back to her. Why do you eat so much sugar? Trying to become a diabetic? Something like that. Lucien shrugged. Best way to help me quit smoking. Yeah. Where'd you learn that? A fortune cookie? Or was it your last brain cell whispering sweet nothings before it died? Wait, does sugar actually help with cravings? Lucien opened his mouth, then shut it again, frowning slightly. He drummed his fingers against the table, eyes narrowing as if running through some internal calculation. No crap, Sherlock. Vlad wanted to die from laughter. Not even close, genius. It spikes your blood sugar, crashes you harder, and makes you crave more. You basically replaced one addiction with another, except this one will kill you slower. Lucien groaned, dropping his head into his hands. Great. So not only am I still craving a cigarette, but now I'm going to be hooked on sugar too. Hey, at least you'll die sweet, Vlad said, smirking as he stole a sugar packet and poured it into his own coffee. You're the worst. Yeah. Vlad took a sip of his coffee, watching as Lucien slumped back against the booth, his rumpled shirt riding up just enough to be distracting. He had no business being that attractive while suffering. It wasn't fair. The waitress returned, dropping 2 plates of food in front of them. Here you go, boys. And hey, sugar addiction or not, at least you ain't smoking. Yeah, silver linings, I guess. Lucien sighed, picking up his fork. Sure, keep telling yourself that, sweetheart. Vlad smirked, shoving a bite of greasy bacon into his mouth. Lucien tilted his head, watching Vlad a little too closely. "You're smiling." "So, my face does that sometimes." Vlad clapped back, stuffing more bacon into his mouth to make it stop. "You haven't smiled since Rick died," Lucien commented, voice softer. Then, with that damnable smirk, he added, "You look hot when you smile." Vlad almost choked, pounding his chest as he hawked up a lung. He gulped down his coffee and sighed. "Can't you be serious for once?" "Haha, I am serious. See, when a man is attracted to another man, sometimes they..." "Oh, screw you." Vlad shot him a glare, still coughing. Lucien grinned wider. "Tempting. I swear to God if you don't shut up." "What? You'll smile at me again?" Lucien waggled his brows. "Because honestly, I think it's worth the risk." Vlad shook his head, reaching for more bacon like it would somehow soak up the absolute disaster his morning had become. "You're impossible." "And yet, here we are," Lucien said, propping his chin on his hand. "You, me, breakfast, undeniable chemistry. It's like fate, really." Vlad rolled his eyes, but the heat in his chest refused to settle. He took another bite of food, refusing to give Lucien the satisfaction of a reaction. But the bastard was still watching him, brown eyes warm and knowing like he had all the time in the world. Damn him. "Any leads?" Vlad asked, desperate to talk about anything else. "None whatsoever, but I know a guy who might be able to help us. He's with the Yakuza. It's probably safer if we stay away from anyone connected to the Virellis for now, at least until we have a solid lead." "All right, let's go." They finished eating, and Vlad went to the bathroom. When he came back, the food had already been paid for, and Lucien was sitting in the car, fiddling with the radio. "Your friend left me a $50 tip," the waitress said, smiling. Deep wrinkles lined her face, but her expression was warm. "Tell him Tess says thanks. We need good tippers, you know. Things are tight." "I'll make sure he knows," Vlad responded. He headed to the car, refusing to believe that Lucien might actually be a decent guy. "What did she say?" Lucien asked. "That she knows what you did last summer," Vlad deadpanned. "Nah, she just said thanks for the tip." "Does it hurt you to say that?" Lucien grinned, pulling out of the diner. "Immensely." Lucien rolled his eyes, flicking through the radio stations with all the patience of a toddler. "You act like saying something nice will physically cause you harm." "It might," Vlad shot back, settling into his seat and stretching his legs. "I could break out in hives, or worse, start developing a soul. That would be tragic. Guess I'll just have to keep being the good one between us." Lucien gave him a sidelong glance, a smirk curling at the edges. "Yeah, right. Since when are you the good one? I tip waitresses and donate to charity. That basically makes me a saint." Lucien tapped the steering wheel, voice as casual as if they weren't driving straight into potential danger. "Uh-huh. And the whole working with the Yakuza thing?" Vlad asked dryly. "They're businessmen, just with a slightly different moral compass." Lucien waved a hand. "Ha ha ha ha." Vlad let out a low, breathless laugh, and Lucien's grin widened. Yeah, Vlad would have really been more than happy to be sucked into the Earth's core at that moment. It had felt like years since he'd laughed, genuinely laughed. They arrived at the small sushi restaurant, with the scent of soy sauce, grilled fish, and freshly steamed rice. A few patrons sat hunched over the counter, quietly sipping miso soup or plucking sushi rolls from lacquered plates. Vlad scanned the room his gaze sweeping over the chefs behind the counter until his eyes landed on a man serving food. He had sharp fox-like features, his black hair slicked back, and a lean frame dressed in a white chef's coat. The second the man's gaze met Lucien's, his entire demeanor changed. His eyes widened in shock, and in the next breath, he turned on his heel and bolted toward the back exit. "Oh, hell no," Lucien muttered. Before Vlad could blink, Lucien lunged forward, grabbing the man's collar and yanking him back with enough force to make him stumble. Lucien's hand shot out before Vlad even had time to react. He grabbed the man's collar, yanking him back with a surprising amount of force. "Oi, dokoni shinkunda!" Lucien yanked the man back into the restaurant. The man struggled, spinning around to face him. "Yamero, Russian, omae wa nani o shite iru n da? Omae ga nigeru riyuu ga aru no ka?" Lucien pushed the man against the counter. "Anhamu kwan, waritaku nai. Fankaru ka?" The chef glared at him. Vlad just stood there, jaw slack. "You speak Japanese?" Lucien didn't even look at him. "You don't?" Vlad bristled, crossing his arms. "That's not the point." The chef finally shook Lucien off with a scowl, straightening his coat. He shot Vlad a wary glance before returning his attention to Lucien. "You shouldn't be here," he said in accented English. "Yeah, well," Lucien dusted off his sleeves. "You shouldn't be running. Sit your ass down, Akihiro. We need to talk." Akihiro's jaw worked, but he didn't try to run. "Do you know Alessandra Virelli? If so, you must know she's gone missing." Akihiro laughed in Lucien's face. "Ha! Are you trying to get me killed? You know I can't say anything about it. Just tell me what you know, and I won't arrest you for the drugs you keep beneath the bar." "What drugs?" Lucien kicked open the cabinet, and small white bags poured out. Akihiro had the decency to look put out, then huffed. "Fine. Word on the street is that she's got an uncle, Enzo. His base is located in the heart of New York City. The word is he's given her to his men until Dioniso agrees to hand over the capo de capo position to him." "Has Don responded?" Akihiro shook his head. "No, and the worst part is, he hasn't even sent Nico after him." That alarmed Vlad. "Why not?" Akihiro shrugged. "I don't know, man. All I know is that the White Tiger and the Father of Lies are up in arms about it. But Alessandra had a reputation for being spoiled. I think Don's using this as a way to punish her." "Do you have an address?" Akihiro rattled off an address deep in the bowels of NYC, a place so bad not even SWAT would go. Perfect. Vlad was glad they finally had their first lead, and they could finally put this case to rest. As for his grandma, he'd have to carve out some time to talk to Bill about it later on. Lucien bent over the table, scribbling down everything Akihiro said, but then dark ink caught Vlad's attention, and the blood froze in his veins. "Sick tattoos," Akihiro said, nodding to the thieves' stars on the back of Lucien's neck. "Kind of reminds me of someone. The Black Death, they used to call him. He disappeared a long time ago, though. Black Death. It was the same name Benny uttered before he died." Vlad's suspicion of Lucien surged back full throttle, like a freight train plowing ahead. Did Lucien get rid of Benny? There was still no motive for him being in the house when his grandma died. His stomach churned, and he watched Lucien like a hawk, as Lucien shrugged it off, flashing Akihiro an easy smile. They headed to the car, and Vlad said nothing. Lucien started the engine. "So, where to next, boss?" His words died in his throat as he stared down the barrel of Vlad's pitch-black Glock. "Who the hell are you?" Lucien's grin widened. You don't know? Vlad cocked his gun. I'm not freaking around. That's the second time we've heard that name. Benny said it too, and I'll ask again. Who the hell are you? Moja zvezda. Vlad almost fired. It took everything in him not to when Lucien uttered those words. His entire body seized up, and his hand trembled on the trigger. Lucien inched forward, nuzzling his temple against the barrel like a madman. I'll tell you everything you want to know. Every answer you need. Let's go back to the hotel. Let's talk about it first. Vlad wanted to kill him, but he couldn't kill Lucien in cold blood without any evidence. He cursed and put the gun away. Fine. Drive. They drove in silence to the hotel. The second the car doors slammed shut, Vlad's mind was already racing. He needed to get in contact with his team immediately, especially if this went sideways. He sent a quick text to Bill and followed Lucien inside the hotel. As they entered the room, he immediately began scanning, checking for threats, making sure they weren't being watched. Satisfied, he pulled out his gun and kept it trained on Lucien. Lucien, however, was casually sitting on the bed, completely unfazed. Start talking, Vlad spat. It's not what you think. Vlad's grip on the gun tightened, his patience running thin. I'm thinking of a lot of things, and all of them involve a bullet in your head. Talk. You don't remember me. Vlad's heart skipped a beat, his eyes narrowing in confusion. What the hell are you talking about? We knew each other, back in Russia. There was no way. He couldn't remember this man, not in any way that made sense. His past was a blur, shrouded in blood and violence, but Lucien's words hit him like a slap. Bull. I went by another name back then, Luka, and you were Alexei, and your grandma was Anya. All the blood rushed to Vlad's head, and he almost dropped the gun. You're Luka? Yes, he whispered. Lucien now, but always Luka. You're dead, Vlad breathed, his heart roaring. He couldn't see straight. His legs were threatening to buckle beneath him. I am officially dead, the way Alexei is dead, and now Anya is dead. Vlad thought he was going to hurl. He staggered, his gun clattering to the ground, unable to take the feelings rushing all over him. Tell me, how did you survive? Lucien released a breath. I'll tell you about Luka, a boy who died in every sense of the word. He was soft and delicate, the kind of boy who looked up to the man next door. Alexei, big, strong, everything Luka wanted to be. But when Alexei left to become a Spetsnaz, Luka couldn't wait. He followed, desperate, but by the time he found him, Alexei was nothing more than pieces of flesh scattered by shrapnel. The war tore him apart, but Luka didn't care. He stayed. He cared for Alexei's broken body, piecing him together like a puzzle, trying to revive the man who had once been everything to him. His lips twisted into a mockery of a smile. Alexei didn't remember him, and yet Luka couldn't let him go. Alexei moved to America, but Luka followed him. He stalked him, watched him. He needed Alexei, the way a man needs air, needed him to breathe. But Luka, desperate to get closer, became something darker. The wrong people, the wrong choices, and suddenly Luka was in the Bratva, a soldier of the worst kind. But still, nothing satisfied him. No power, no drug, no crime could fill the hole left by Alexei's memory. Alexei died again, on a mission, and Luka, who had already died 1,000 times inside, didn't stop. He hunted for him. 5 years, 5 long torturous years, but he found Alexei, alive working as a cop in the US. Luka couldn't stop. He couldn't. So he became a cop too, just to be near him, to breathe the same air. But Alexei had no memory of him. He was a stranger. But Anya remembered, and she told Luka that Alexei's memories were too painful to relieve, too painful to bear. And Luka couldn't kill Anya, not because she was innocent, but because she was a part of Alexei, Luka's Alexei. She was the last piece of him that Luka could still hold on to. So he let her live, but everything else Luka would destroy. You see, Luka's hands are stained with more than blood, the things he's willing to destroy to get to him. And if that means tearing down everything else, burning it to the ground, then so be it. Because Luka will do anything at all, to bring Alexei back. And that makes Luka lethal. Luka. He's Luka. Vlad's fingers traced the twisted scar at the side of his neck. The skin raised and ridged like something had been torn away, of something he had tried to forget. The flesh was mangled, a disfigurement that pulsed with the ache of old memories. He didn't need to see it to feel it. A pain that throbbed in his chest, an emptiness that could never be filled. The boy he once knew, the boy who had stolen his heart and his sanity, was gone. But now, sitting across from him, was that same boy, or the ghost of him. Lucien, with those eyes. Those dark, haunted eyes told stories Vlad couldn't bear to hear. Fragments flooded his mind. Pieces of Luka's laughter, of the soft way his name had been whispered, of the way Luka's smile had been a light in the endless dark of their broken world. Luka was the boy who had made Alexei's heart stop. And that boy was here, right in front of him. Time seemed to slow, the world narrowing down to the small brutal space between them. Vlad didn't know who moved first, but suddenly he was overwhelmed by Lucien's presence. His arms were full of him. Lucien, warm and alive, pulling him in like a force of nature. Lucien's hands cupped Vlad's face, his fingers tracing the hard planes of his jaw as though memorizing the feel of him all over again. His lips crashed into Vlad's like he was starving for air, desperate and frantic, as though he'd been waiting an eternity to breathe again. The kiss was raw, hungry, so familiar it nearly knocked the breath from Vlad's lungs. Every inch of him screamed that this wasn't right. But his body, betrayed by old memories, knew it was Luka. His Luka. Lucien kissed him as if he was dying of air, as if he had been suffocating without him. And maybe, in some sick, twisted way, he had been. Maybe they both had. Vlad's hands shot out to grasp Lucien's arms, holding him tighter as though he feared. If he let go, the boy would vanish. But deep down, he knew it wasn't just the boy he was holding on to. It was the lie, the freaking lie that they'd both been living, pretending they could move on, pretending they didn't want to burn everything down just to feel each other again. Lucien pulled back just a few inches, his breath hot against Vlad's lips. His smile was wicked and dark, but beneath the surface there was something broken, something lost. "You're still angry," Lucien murmured. His eyes were stinging again. This time Vlad didn't know if he could stop it. He held on for as long as he could, but he was remembering everything now. Anya had loved Luka. They both had. He would never hurt her, and yet Vlad still needed more answers. But he was too exhausted by this, by everything. "I should be," Vlad replied, his own voice rough, as if the words were trying to claw their way out of his chest. "Good. Be angry." Lucien's hands slid down Vlad's body, tracing the scars of their past. "You should be angry with me, with what I've done, with who I've become. But deep down, you're not. You never were. Vlad clenched his jaw, his heartbeat racing. He wanted to deny it, wanted to tell Lucien that he was wrong, that he had every right to hate him. But his body, his goddamn body, betrayed him every time Lucien touched him. Every time he whispered Luca's name in that broken, almost pained way. Lucien pressed his forehead to Vlad's, his breath mingling with his, both of them caught in the tangled web of what had been, what was, and what could never be again. You didn't kill me, Vlad, Lucien whispered. I'm still here. I never left.
Chapter 5. Lucien. Love had always been something to conquer, something to control, something to bend to his will. But standing here now, facing the storm that was Vlad, Lucien realized how wrong he'd been. You can't contain a hurricane. Vlad wasn't just a man. He was a force of nature, and Lucien had witnessed him tear through Luca, eviscerating everything that had once been. Luca had been too weak for this world, but Vlad was something else entirely, something unstoppable. Lucien's lips met Vlad's in a clash of heat and hunger. Brutal, unyielding. Teeth scraped, breath tangled, bodies moved in a desperate rhythm. No warning, no mercy, just the sharp pull of desire. Vlad shoved him back, but Lucien followed, pressing closer, chasing the taste of him. Fingers tangled in fabric, grasping, pulling. A chair cracked. The room swayed with motion, blurred by urgency. The world was breaking around them. But Lucien only wanted more. Lucien's hand yanked at Vlad's shirt, tearing the fabric. Vlad's fingers dug into his hair, pulling him close. Too close. He could feel every beat of Vlad's pulse. Mine. His chest heaved. You think you can break me? Vlad hissed, almost feral. I've been shattered for years, he spat back, voice rough, wild. Vlad shoved Lucien against the dresser, the wood biting into his back. A lamp crashed to the floor, glass shattering, but neither of them stopped. Lucien barely had time to breathe before Vlad's mouth was on his, hot, demanding. Their bodies moved together, feverish and reckless, pressed so close there was no space left between them. Hands roamed, gripping, claiming. Each touch was a brand, searing through fabric, through skin. Lucien's heart pounded, drowning out everything but the press of Vlad's lips, the slide of tongues, the sharp bite of teeth. His body burned, aching for more, for deeper, for everything. Every kiss was a battle, every gasp a surrender. And Lucien had no intention of stopping, not until they burned the world down. Damn, that was amazing, Lucien breathed, smiling. He turned, and his heart stopped. Moja zvezda. Vlad had his thick arm thrown over his face, but he was shaking. Oh. Lucien inched closer and gathered Vlad into his arms. Vlad gripped his bicep, fingers digging into his flesh. Tears soaked Lucien's skin, but he said nothing, just held him. Finally, Vlad broke, his broken wail enough to shatter Lucien's soul. Anya had been a wonderful woman, and Lucien was confident they would catch the men responsible for killing her. But he couldn't share what he knew. Not yet. Not until Vlad was ready. Until then, they would lay low. They made love one last time before Vlad finally fell asleep. Lucien woke to sunlight streaming into the room, and Vlad sitting at the edge of the bed, already on his phone with Bill. Lucien's ass was sore, the ache like the lash of a whip. It hurt to move, but he slowly sat up, ignoring the wince at the soiled sheets. "Bill?" Lucien asked. "Yeah." Vlad's face was splotchy, wet from his shower. "We've got another lead. We should go." Lucien nodded and dragged himself out of bed. He showered and brushed his teeth, and when he stepped back into the room, Vlad was strapping his guns onto his massive chest, his badge clipped to his hip. "Ready?" Lucien walked over and kissed him, slow and sweet. Yes. Vlad stared into Lucien's eyes. Look, about last night. It's fine, Lucien cut in. We can figure out the rest later. I still don't trust you, Vlad murmured, and Lucien couldn't blame him. If he were Vlad, he wouldn't trust himself either. But you trust my BJ skills. Vlad snorted, shoving Lucien's shoulder. Get dressed and shut up. Lucien smirked, pulled on his clothes, and together they left the hotel. They head back to the precinct, and Bill calls a meeting at 9 a.m., so Vlad and Lucien head to the coffee break room. Lucien pours Vlad a cup of black tar and himself one with too much cream and sugar, enough to get him high for the entire day. Vlad drank from the cup, leaning against the counter, his face pensive. You good? Lucien asked, crossing his arms as he took a sip. He winced at the sugary sweet taste, but kept drinking. Can't go back now. Yeah, I just have some funeral arrangements to make, Vlad uttered. Can you? Lucien's expression turned serious. Of course. Anything you need. We still haven't found her killer, Vlad continued. I don't think I could rest easy in that house, so I think I'll need a place to stay. The offer to stay with him was on the tip of Lucien's tongue, but he refrained. Vlad probably needed a few days to collect himself, and moving in with your ex, dead but not dead, boyfriend wouldn't be a good idea. Take all the time you need. Vlad licked his lips and looked around to make sure the coast was clear before he touched the side of Lucien's neck. How'd you find me? Vlad said in a deep rumble. Dmitri, from the Bratva, Lucien replied. He found you. Dmitri? Vlad asked. Alessandra's personal bodyguard? Lucien couldn't say that he was currently undercover at the Virelli's mansion, but that's another story. The Bratva had people everywhere, so it wouldn't be a surprise to Vlad. Lucien hummed. He found you, but you can trust him. He won't say anything to them about your whereabouts. And you? Vlad asked, his gaze hard. Will you tell them where I am? Lucien froze, his heart pounding. That had been the plan, and it seemed he was running out of time with Vlad. Lucien cracked a smile. I won't tell them what they already know. A white lie, but it would buy them more time. Vlad stroked his neck and smiled, pulling away. Slippery snake, Vlad mumbled. No wonder they named you Black Death. Lucien stilled. He chanced a glance at Vlad, who was already looking down at him. Vlad knew. Lucien was about to explain, to tell him what really happened, but they didn't have time for that now. Natasha stuck her head in the lounge cafe room. Lucien, boss, is ready for us now. Showtime, Vlad mumbled, draining his mug. Lucien followed him and Natasha to the briefing room. Bill stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, his face drawn with exhaustion but burning with purpose. A map was spread out in front of him, red circles and hastily scribbled notes marking points of interest. Vlad took a seat, but Lucien remained standing, arms crossed, the caffeine barely keeping him steady. We've got a lead, Bill said without preamble. Alessandra's alive. We found her. Lucien's pulse kicked up. Vlad's grip on his coffee mug went white-knuckled. She's being held in Enzo Virelli's territory, Bill continued, tapping a spot on the map. A warehouse deep in the heart of his domain, fortified, guarded. Virelli, Vlad muttered. That bastard. How sure are we? Lucien asked. As sure as we can be, Bill said. We got eyes on the place. Movement inside. Looks like they're keeping her there, at least for now. But it won't last. Enzo Virelli's men weren't just dangerous. They were a walking execution squad. Tactical gear, Kevlar, sidearms strapped tight, rifles slung across their backs. Silent, unshakable. The kind of soldiers who didn't ask questions, didn't hesitate. They moved like predators, fingers never far from the trigger. Snipers watched from the rooftops, their scopes glinting like distant stars. In the alleys, shadows shifted, men waiting, hands resting on knives, ready to cut throats before a scream could escape. Blacked-out cars idled at the curb, engines purring, doors cracked just enough to glimpse the gleam of shotgun barrels inside. This wasn't just a trap. It was a slaughterhouse waiting for the first drop of blood, and the second that came, there would be no stopping it. "This is suicide," Vlad said. "Maybe, but she doesn't have time for us to play it safe." He straightened, eyes cutting between them. "Get your gear. We're going in." Chapter 6. Lucien. Betrayal was never sweet. It curdled on the tongue, bitter as old blood, rancid with remorse. Lucien had never believed in the romance of it. No poetic justifications, no silver linings. It was a blade, cold and merciless, pressed against the throat of trust. And yet, here he was, standing on the precipice, the knife in his own hand. But what could you do if love didn't bend? You break it. Vlad would never yield. Not to reason, not to fear, and certainly not to Lucien. That left only one option. His fingers curled into fists as he stared at the man who once held his heart like a fragile thing, before crushing it, before making Lucien forget which of them had betrayed the other first. It didn't matter anymore. By the time this was over, one of them would be in pieces. The city loomed around them, a carcass of concrete and steel, its bones jutting skyward in rusted fire escapes and broken neon signs. The streets pulsed like open wounds, leaking the sickly glow of flickering streetlights. Graffiti slithered over brick walls like the desperate whispers of ghosts, screaming names no one would remember. Lucien watched the decay unfold through the rain-streaked window, the glass cold against his temple. The building sagged under its own ruin, their shattered windows gaping like hollowed-out eyes. This city had been dying for years, and tonight Lucien would wait for its choked-out breath. "You good?" Vlad's voice broke him out of his thoughts. Lucien sighed, reaching over to take Vlad's hand. They were both dressed in tactical gear, opting for an unmarked black police cruiser. Vlad's eyes were on the road, and Lucien used the distraction to gently trace the star-shaped scar on his neck. "Do you remember what happened?" Vlad shook his head. "Shrapnel," they said. "I don't remember anything after becoming a Spetsnaz and being discharged. I never asked. How'd you find me?" "I followed you," Lucien admitted. "Anya and I thought it was best you didn't know about me. Not yet. She said your memories should return organically, but I was beginning to get impatient." Vlad snorted, shaking his head. "It still doesn't make sense to me." He turned left onto the street, his eyes scanning the road. "Back in Mishkin, we were lovers. Then you followed me to become a soldier. I lost my memories. After that, just blank. I don't remember anything." Lucien's mouth curled. "Are you asking, or is the detective in you asking?" "Both," Vlad admitted. "And Anya, you two were close when we were together. She kept our secret. I remember that at least. The missing parts. What happened?" "What happened was that Lucien went to the depths of hell to find Vlad, and came out. It's a long story." "Shorten it," Vlad clipped, and Lucien could see his lover was losing patience. Lucien pinched Vlad's cheek, and he knocked his hand away. "Soon." Now wasn't the time. They'd need all their focus when they attacked Enzo and his crew. Vlad's jaw set, and he stepped on the gas, tearing through the streets. The clouds hung low, pressing against the skyline, thick and unmoving. Lucien scanned the area, keeping his eyes out for suspicious activity. Vlad huffed, but said nothing more. His jaw tightened, his grip on the wheel firm as he stepped on the gas, tearing through the empty streets. Then, something shot out from the alleyway. A blur of white and red. Glass shattered. Metal groaned. Something heavy slammed into the windshield. "God damn it!" Vlad yanked the wheel, the car skidding hard, tires screaming against the wet pavement. Lucien barely had time to throw an arm up before his head nearly cracked against the glass. The windshield spiderwebbed from the impact, the wipers dragging sluggish streaks of rain over the blood smeared across the surface. The woman rolled off the hood, collapsing onto the street like a discarded puppet. Her white t-shirt was soaked in blood, her hair a matted mess, her face bruised and swollen, lips split, nose gushing red. In her trembling hand, she clutched a single shard of glass. "Alessandra!" Lucien gasped. "Get her up!" Vlad was already out of the car, racing over to her. "New York Police Department. You're safe. Damn it." She lunged. The glass sliced through the air, barely missing his throat. Vlad recoiled just in time, but the feral look in her eyes sent a sharp pang through Lucien's chest. Lucien grabbed her wrist, wrenching the weapon away. She thrashed against him, her nails biting into his skin, her body all sharp angles and desperation. "Grab her. Get her into the car." A sound, a click. Lucien froze. He turned, slow as death. Men were crawling from the shadows, guns raised, silent as specters. "Damn it," Vlad breathed. The rain started to fall in earnest, drumming against the pavement, washing thin streaks of blood down the gutters. "Cover me." Then Vlad moved, coat whipping up in the wind, guns drawn, fingers already pulling the trigger. Lucien barely had time to think. The moment Vlad's gunfire cracked through the air, everything erupted. The night lit up with muzzle flashes, and the air filled with the sharp scent of gunpowder. "Get her in the car," Vlad barked. Lucien wrestled with Alessandra, who thrashed like a rabid animal, shrieking and clawing at his face. Her strength was unnatural, fueled by pure terror. "Damn it, stay still," he hissed, dodging a wild swing of her nails. The gunmen advanced, shadows against the warehouse lights. The SWAT team roared into action, shouts echoing across the lot as bullets ripped through the air. Vlad moved like a predator, cold and efficient. He ducked behind a rusted-out sedan, his Beretta spitting fire. One gunman went down, another staggered back, but they just kept coming. Lucien finally overpowered Alessandra, wrenching her arms behind her back and dragging her toward the cruiser. "I got her," he shouted. A bullet punched into the hood of the car, missing him by inches. Vlad cursed, vaulting over the sedan and sprinting toward them. "We need to move. Now." Lucien shoved Alessandra into the back seat, just as a deafening explosion rocked the lot. The warehouse doors blew inward, a fireball engulfing the entrance, heat licking at the car's exterior. The last thing Lucien saw before diving into the vehicle was the gleam of Enzio Virelli's grin from the shadows. It had been too easy, and now they were right where he wanted them. Vlad threw himself into the driver's seat, slamming the car into reverse. The tires screeched against the pavement, the scent of burning rubber filling the air as they tore out of the lot. Lucien fought to keep Alessandra restrained in the back seat, pinning her down as she thrashed against him, her nails clawing at his arms, her teeth snapping dangerously close to his skin. "Jesus Christ, woman," he snarled, fumbling for the cuffs stashed in the back seat. She kicked out wildly, catching him in the ribs, but he gritted his teeth and wrenched her arms behind her back, snapping the cuffs around her wrists. Stay down. Vlad gripped the wheel tightly, reaching for his radio. We've got her. Meet us at the... A sharp crack split the air. The back tires blew. The car lurched violently to the right. Damn it, Vlad snarled, fighting for control as the vehicle skidded sideways. Lucien barely had time to brace before he was thrown hard against the door, Alessandra's weight slamming into him. Vlad cursed, hands white-knuckled around the wheel, but they were losing control. The car fishtailed wildly, zigzagging down the street, but the bastards were on them. Bullets slamming into the metal, sparking off the frame. Vlad had no choice. He stomped on the gas. The ruined tires screamed against the asphalt, the engine roaring as they shot forward, weaving dangerously between abandoned warehouses and rusted-out semis. Lucien barely lifted his head when... A silhouette. No time. The warehouse silo loomed ahead, the metal exterior rusted and gaping. Vlad, don't... Too late. The car smashed through the side of the structure, steel buckled, glass shattered. Lucien barely caught a glimpse of Vlad being thrown forward before the windshield exploded outward. Vlad's body hurtled through the air. Lucien watched in horror as he crashed straight through the shattered glass, rolling violently onto the ground several feet in front of the wreck. Then everything went still. Lucien was screaming. He shoved the witch off him, scrambling to get out of the car, but the second his legs touched the ground, they folded under him. He'd been shot. A sharp, searing pain tore through his thigh. His fingers trembled as they pressed against the wound, blood warm and slick beneath his touch. His entire body shook, but he forced himself forward, crawling toward Vlad. No. No. A sob clawed up his throat as he dragged himself closer, his breath ragged, his hands slick with sweat and blood. He was almost within reach when... A gun cocked behind him. Lucien whipped around, his vision swimming. A massive man eclipsed the sun, standing over him, brown hair falling over his forehead, scars crisscrossing his face like jagged railroad tracks. His mouth twisted into a snarl, and in his arms was Alessandra. She clung to him, her thin, battered arms wrapped around his neck as if he were a lifeline. Lucien's breath caught. Dimitri? Or, better yet, the Black Death. Lucien's eyes jerked to his weapon, and it struck him like a physical blow who Anya's killer was. It had to be Dimitri. Lucien swallowed, scrambling back, trying to get away. Dimitri's lip curled, but he didn't speak. Instead, he turned, lifting his gun, and fired at the advancing men. "Get out of here," he uttered. "I'll tell them you're both dead." Lucien hesitated for only a moment before giving a curt nod. There was no time for questions, no time for anything but survival. He crawled back to Vlad, blood soaking his pants, and grabbed him with every ounce of strength he had left. He dragged him away from the wreckage, away from the gunfire, away from the shadow of death. The wail of sirens pierced the night, a distant cry of salvation. Lucien held Vlad tight, cradling him in his arms. "You're okay. You're fine. Don't leave me again, Vlad. Please." His voice broke, but he held on. He had done everything to stay with Vlad, to be at his side, but he was always just a little too late, always a little too far behind to catch up. He pressed his fingers to Vlad's throat. His pulse was strong, steady. Vlad was alive. And so they lay there, tangled in blood and wreckage, waiting for the storm to pass. 1 week later. Lucien stood on crutches, the rain pattering against his skin as they lowered Anya into the earth. The cherrywood casket gleamed under the gray sky, its glossy surface covered in flowers, the rain drumming a soft rhythm against it. Most of the force was there, along with members of Anya's church. Lucien rested a hand on Vlad's shoulder, trying to be there for him in whatever way he could. Vlad had been very lucky, walking away with a hairline fracture in his cheek, a concussion, and a whole lot of bruises. He looked battered in more ways than one. After the burial, they gathered at the house for a small reception, where people ate cabbage soup and buckwheat porridge in somber silence. "How's he doing?" Bill asked, patting Lucien on the back. "He's fine. Coping," Lucien said. "And you?" Bill gave him a once-over. "You're looking a lot better. Nothing like the roadkill you initially were." "Gee, thanks." Lucien rolled his eyes. "I'm fine. Thank you." Bill held his gaze, his voice lowering. "Убедитесь, что он в безопасности." Lucien gave a curt nod. "Is the case closed?" "Yes. Benny killed Anya. The case is closed." Bill squeezed Lucien's shoulder and went off to talk to someone else. Lucien lingered near the doorway, watching Vlad speak with a few women from Anya's church. They spoke in rapid-fire Russian, and Vlad nodded, but his gaze was distant, his expression empty. He was in pain. Lucien knew it. The past few days had been a blur, just enough time in the hospital to get stitched up before Vlad had to rush back and plan the funeral. He hadn't had time to grieve. Lucien glanced around, waiting for the right moment. When the coast was clear, he hobbled up the stairs, crutch under his arm, making his way to Anya's bedroom. The room smelled like lavender and old books. He rummaged through her things, his fingers ghosting over her life. Old letters, faded photographs, handwritten notes. He sat on her bed and picked up the letters they had written to each other over the years. His vision blurred, his throat tightened, and tears burned as they trailed down his cheeks. A soft click shattered the silence. Lucien tensed. "You know," Vlad whispered. Lucien exhaled sharply, his shoulders slumping. He wiped his tears and turned. The barrel of a gun was aimed straight at his head, but Lucien didn't focus on the weapon. He looked past it, to Vlad. Bruises covered his face, deep purple and blue, fading at the edges. He wore all black, a gold-linked chain glinting beneath his collar. Angry, molten bruises wove up and down his tattooed forearms. "There was one thing I couldn't figure out," Vlad continued, stepping forward. "One thing that didn't make sense." Lucien remained still. "What's that?" he asked softly, even though he already knew. Vlad's grip tightened on the gun. Who the third person was? Lucien said nothing. "Benny was in the basement. You were in the living room. But who killed my grandma?" Lucien's lips parted. "I think you know." "Tell me." Lucien swallowed. "Dmitri, otherwise known as the Black Death." Vlad sucked in a sharp breath. His eyes darted back and forth, trying to make sense of it, and then rage flickered across his face. "You knew he'd come. That's why you came here, after my grandmother." His voice wavered with accusation. Lucien nodded. "I was too late. I'm sorry." "And Benny? What the hell did he have to do with all of this?" "I told you. Benny was my informant. He works for the Virellis and the Bratvas." Vlad's face twisted in fury. "You asshole," he snarled. "You were working for them the entire time. Is that it? Were you working against me?" Lucien stood slowly, careful not to startle Vlad's trigger finger. His eyes stayed locked on him. "No, I wasn't." He paused. "Luca is dead. Alexei is dead. My job is to make sure they stay dead." "I don't understand." Lucien exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Dmitri and I made a deal that night. He knows who I am. He knew I was on Alessandra's case. In exchange for information, he agreed to tell the Bratvas that we're dead." "So, you're dirty now? Is that it?" Lucien let out a bitter laugh. I don't know what it means to be clean." He met Vlad's eyes, unflinching. "I never stopped looking for you, Vlad. Anya kept you safe until she couldn't anymore. They were always going to kill her. She knew too much. I just thought we'd have more time." Vlad's grip on the gun trembled. His chest rose and fell in sharp, unsteady breaths. "I should kill you," he hissed. "Here." Lucien placed the letters on the table. "Read these. Anya was living on borrowed time. I'm sorry. I'll give you space, but I'm here, Vlad. I'll always be here." He turned to leave, but before he could take a step, Vlad's hand shot out, fingers gripping his bicep. Tears swam in his eyes, his voice breaking. "You won't leave, will you? You're all I have left." Lucien's expression softened, his heart aching at the raw vulnerability in Vlad's face. "Okay," Lucien said. "Let's read them together." Lucien watched Vlad settle beside him, his hands shaking slightly as he opened Anya's letters. The silence in the room grew heavier, suffocating almost, as Vlad began to read. Lucien already knew what was inside. He had known for a long time, but seeing Vlad's face twist in pain as he read the words, it felt different, almost like experiencing it all over again. Vlad's tears were coming down harder now, and Lucien knew he probably wasn't reading much of it. "Anya was in the KGB, Vlad," Lucien said quietly. "She knew what the Bratva was capable of. She knew that being gay in their ranks would get us killed." "Is that why?" Vlad's eyes flickered up from the paper, his face pale, haunted. "She told me to enlist," he whispered. "She knew what it would cost." Lucien nodded, his gaze distant. "She did. She loved you, but she also knew the price of staying hidden. The village we came from was too small, too entwined with the Bratva's grasp. Every young man in that village was either recruited or disappeared. Anya knew there was only one way to survive. She knew that for us, staying together would mean our deaths. So she told me to enlist, and I did. And you followed." Vlad's hands tightened around the letters, the paper crinkling in his grip. "Yeah, you enlisted because she asked you to, and I followed because we both knew the consequences if we didn't. But that wasn't all. She kept our secret, Vlad, our love. She knew if anyone found out, it would be the end for us. The Bratva couldn't know we were lovers. She kept it hidden for us, all that time. She kept us alive by keeping us in the shadows." "Yeah," Lucien sighed. "And then, when you were injured, when you lost your memories, everything changed. You forgot me. You forgot us." His voice cracked. "I wanted to wait for you, and I did, but they were watching me, and when you forgot, it led to Luca's death, and to my rebirth." Vlad's eyes burned with guilt and confusion. "I never wanted to forget. I never wanted to lose you." "I know, Vlad, but you didn't just lose your memories. You lost everything, and then, when it all fell apart, it was like nothing was left." Lucien's gaze softened as he leaned closer. The room grew quiet again as Vlad continued to read, his face twisted in sorrow. Lucien couldn't look away. He knew how hard it had been for Anya to write those letters, knowing what was coming for her. Lucien could feel the grief that had been sewn into every line. Finally, after a long pause, Lucien spoke again. "Anya knew she'd be dead one day. She knew she wouldn't escape him. No one escaped the KGB. But why? Why would he?" Vlad's voice broke off. "Because he was the one who made sure she didn't escape. He executed her, Vlad. Anya knew exactly what was coming." His eyes narrowed slightly. "And she knew something else too. She knew that Dmitri knew we were alive." Then why didn't he report us? Why let us live? Because it serves him. Dmitri plays his own game. He doesn't care about loyalty, Vlad. He's all about power, keeping us alive, keeping that secret. It gives him leverage. It gives him control. So, all this time, he's been keeping us alive for control. Lucien nodded. Exactly. Dmitri's not a man to be underestimated. He understands how to play the game. Keeping us alive, letting us think we're free, gives him power over the Bratva, over everyone. Benny was in on it too, and now Dmitri is working undercover as Alessandra's bodyguard with the Virellis. I don't know what he aims to accomplish there, but now that Alessandra is found alive, I think a war is brewing between them, and we have to be ready. Do you think the Bratva is waiting for that? Yes, Lucien said. They were all dogs fighting over a scrap of meat, but one of the dogs would eventually win. I'm sorry I doubted you, Vlad chuckled. You were. Very suspicious, though. Lucien cracked a grin, but it mangled on his face. So many years have been wasted between them. So many years. Lucien had rebuilt his life in America, and he wanted to do so as a gay man with his partner, Vlad. He wanted to be out and proud, everything the Bratva would have robbed them of. Moja zvezda, he whispered. I'm sorry for all the hurt I've caused you, for the lies, but I swear to you, Vlad, I will never leave. Before he could blink, Vlad yanked him forward, crashing their mouths together in a furious, desperate kiss. Lucien moaned, gripping the fabric of Vlad's shirt as heat surged between them. Vlad kissed him like he was trying to brand him, like he could make him stay forever. His touch was fire, burning through every layer of doubt, every wall Lucien had ever built. And Lucien let himself burn. They pulled apart, both panting, staring into each other's eyes. Huh. Why do you taste like red lollipops? Vlad chuckled. Why don't you want another taste? Or are you good with a sugar rush? Lucien teased. Nah, Vlad shook his head. Too much sugar. I'd probably end up with a toothache. And a sugar coma. So I'm that sweet, huh? Like a candy overload. Sweet, Vlad said, but dangerously sweet. You're basically a cavity in human form. Lucien smirked, leaning in just a touch closer. Oh, I see. So, you're telling me I'm bad for your health? Absolutely, Vlad replied with a grin. But like all addictions, I keep coming back for more. And for the first time in a long while, Lucien allowed himself to believe in something sweet, something real. They had both been broken, but together they could rebuild. And maybe, just maybe, they had a future after all. Betrayal was never sweet, but redemption. Redemption was something worth fighting for. The end.